Oh boy, it's finally time, my precious fellow friends, guys, people. Oh boy. Hello there, everybody. This is CwapTheNintendin here, and welcome to another edition of Platinum Impressions, in which I talk about games and stuff and blah blah la la la. So, I'm here today to talk about. Wait, hold on. Why am I even talking about this? You guys already know what I think of this game. Look, I'm talking about Undertale. This has been like the game to talk about ever since it came out. Like, honest to God. Okay. Why? And everyone on the planet, all 10 million of you, all 10 billion of you have played this game. Yes, even babies have played this game, and they already know it's good. It's amazing. Great game. So why am I even adding my own 2 cents into it? Why? Because I want the views. That's what I want. I want the views. And, you know, because Undertale gets a lot of views. For some reason. I don't know why, but it is. Like, I feel like it's kind of pointless to talk about this game because I already talked about this game before. Like, during Ocarina of Time, I already contemplated should I do a Platinum Impressions or not, and I would eventually do it. But honest to God, everyone knows this game. Everyone knows this game. Why am I even putting my own... Everyone knows the story. Everyone knows the characters. Everyone knows the gameplay. So why am I even talking about it? How? How does no one, like, not know this game? Oh yeah, because I played it and, you know, people recommended it to me and, you know, yeah. So anyway, with that rant over, onward to Undertale. So... this game was actually in the works for about a couple of years. Like, this game was actually in the works. There was actually a demo that, you know, that came to be, like, in 2013. And I think the game was supposed to come out in 2014. And it was delayed to 2015. And then when it finally came out, like, of course, people got all excited about it. People got all sort of hype about this game. Like, it's like one of the greatest games of the generation. Like, only once in a lifetime does this game come out and challenge the perception of gaming. And we all thank Mr. Toby Fox for that. Because, you know, he's the man who is heavily Earthbound inspired. And yes, Undertale is very, very Earthbound inspired indeed. I guess that's why people are so drawn to it a lot, I guess. But, you know, as for me, I say probably in my top 20 games. Like, honestly, like, I wouldn't call it like a masterpiece of anything. In fact, I don't think it even should be a masterpiece, but I still think it's a really, really great game. And, you know, it's not perfect by any other means, but whatever. I'll go into that as I go into that. I don't feel like I need any notes on this because, you know, all the game happens. So, basically, what happens is there's this war between humans and monsters, and the humans won, causing all the monsters to retreat to their own little place called the Underground. And you play as this human who has fallen down on Mount Ebit and entered into the Underground, as it were. And, you know, you travel through the ruins, meeting all sorts of crazy monsters along the way, including one such caretaker, Goat Mom, named Toriel, who is literally holding your hand throughout the first part of the ruins, because, you know, she's a play on tutorials, but yeah, you continue just following her until, you know, eventually she leaves you alone for a little bit, and that leaves you to do whatever you want. But, of course, you end up at her house, where she promises to take care of you, but then you start to question whether or not this is home. So, obviously trying to protect you from, you know, whatever else lies in the underground, Toriel fights you, and regardless of whether or not you decide to, well, you know, kill her or spare her, you go into the underground anyway, having all sorts of crazy adventures, meeting all sorts of crazy enemies, characters, and just all around general hijinks. Okay, I wouldn't call it hijinks. I would call it more like a journey to, you know, an endpoint. To, you know, the endpoint of, you know, the game. where you have to face off against the King of Monsters so that you can choose whether or not you can go home. And that's basically the whole skinny of Undertale. Everyone pretty much likes this story, and I can pretty much tell you why, because the characters, they are extremely likable. Like, honestly, in terms of, you know, Earthbound inspired stuff and just independent games in general, honestly couldn't really think of a more like likable cast of characters. Like Toriel, for instance. Like, Toriel is such a kind, loving character. You just can't get mad at her for like holding your hand, because she's supposed to be like the play on words on how games hold your hand in nowadays. In fact, through one section of the ruins, she literally holds your hand. Plus she has facts on snails, plus she gets puns, so yeah. I like the two skeleton brothers, Sans and Papyrus, because, you know, they're such a perfect combination. Their introduction in the snowy part of the underground is just perfect. Like, you think you're gonna come across this menacing group of couple of, you know, skeleton monsters, but it turns out that Sans is actually the playful, lazy jokester who likes puns all the time. And Undertale really made me appreciate puns. Not everyone likes them, but Undertale made me appreciate, you know, his puns, honestly. And Papyrus, oh man. Papyrus is so good. Papyrus is too good. He's so full of himself, but it's not to the point where it's annoying. Like, that rarely happens. Like, he's so full of himself and he's so egotistical about, you know, him being a part of the Royal Guard and capturing human. And it's really good. His character is so good. Like, even if you decide to go for a run in which you kill people a lot, he still believes in you that you can make a change. Honestly, like, it's so good. Like, he is so good. Undyne, the fish lady, who is, you know, presumably your enemy, and I honestly thought, you know, she was the final boss. And she is like crazy menacing at first. Like, your encounters through her are just basically the most frantic parts about the game at that point, honestly, for me. And when you do eventually befriend her, she's so crazy, but she's so crazy in a hilarious way. Like, you'll never be able to take cooking seriously anymore because of what Undyne does. Really good. And, you know, I'm not going to spoil any other characters that you meet throughout the game. It's even to the point where, just like in Earthbound and Xenoblade Chronicles, talking to NPCs for me is really, really fun. Because, you know, the writing is so good. Just like in Earthbound and Xenoblade, like, the NPCs are just so much fun to talk to. Like, literally, as I was recording footage, after I recorded footage, I went to, you know, Snowden, which is your first major town. And I just couldn't help but talk to everybody. Just like what I did with Earthbound. And, you know, they have they have all their sort of personalities, their little quirks, their little jives. Their little jives and stuff. Their little jives. Like, even the enemies are hilarious. Like, Vegetoid. If you try to talk to Vegetoid, he's like, plants can't talk, dummy. Or if you tell him to do that, they'll say, like, farmed freshly, farmed locally, or whatever. Or part of a complete breakfast. It's just so good. Like, the writing in this game is just so good. Like, this game has a lot of personality and character. And, again, it can be either very, very hilarious. Just like in Earthbound, it can be really hilarious, or really just heart-wrenching at the same time. Like, I'm not even gonna spoil what happens near the end. But let's just say there is a probable chance that it will tug out your heartstrings there, buddy. It possibly. I know it did. I know it possibly did for me, but yeah. I just really love, like, honest to God, I just really like the writing in Undertale and how, you know, and I didn't even mention, like, the lore building in this game. And honestly, the lore building that that builds up, starting with Snowden, and as you go through Waterfall, like, if you, like, you know, it explains more and more about, you know, how the war between the humans and monsters, you know, transpired, and how the monsters all, you know, moved to a new place. It honestly reminds me of Steven Universe in a way, that you get little hints throughout almost every episode. You get bits and pieces of what you know, the gems, of what the crystal gems, garnet, amethyst, and pearl are like, and you know what they have to hunt, what they have to do, and you know, eventually you're finding out that, you know, they escaped their homeworld of gems because, you know, stuff happened. And honestly, really just reminds me of that, just you know, getting bits and pieces of how, you know, the backstory of this game, you know, transpired. And I'm not gonna spoil it here, but there is a point in the game where you get like a huge info dump on one such aspect. I'm just gonna say that right now. There is one. But yeah, that is basically, you know, Undertale's, you know, big story and stuff. And honestly, it can go depending on what you can do in a sense. You can either just be a pacifist, just see the game all the way over to its true end, or you can just be a relentless killer and just murder everybody, which brings out the best in their characters. I'm not even gonna spoil like genocide stuff, like the big genocide stuffs here, but I'm just gonna say that it brings out what I consider to be the best of, you know, those characters, honestly. But yeah, that is basically like Undertale's story in, you know, a nutshell, all discombobulated me and all that stuff, but whatever. So, another big reason why this game is so popular is because, you know, the gameplay itself. It's an RPG, but it honestly doesn't really treat itself as an RPG. I mean, you get experience points, you get level ups, you get money to buy weapons and armor, but that's the thing. But that's the thing, which brings me to the main part of this game. You can play this game however you want. And from the trailer alone, the game stresses the point in that you can choose all of the enemies' fates. You can either spare the enemies, or you can just be like an RPG and kill them. And just kill them. So you have your overworld stuff. You can buy stuff. It's the usual RPG fare, but battles are where it gets interesting. Because again, like I said, you can choose to either kill like an RPG or spare enemies. So if you decide to, if you decide to be a pacifist and just, go for a pacifist run, you gotta spare the enemies, and you have to do different acts depending on, the enemy. Like Froggets, for example, you have to compliment Froggets. And, they attack you anyway, but if they don't feel up to fighting anymore, you can spare them. You won't get any experience for it, but you can get money for it. So, generally, by being a nice guy, it really has the adverse effect on the story in that you don't kill anything, you see the game all the way over to its true conclusion. Plus, the battle system has sort of all sorts of elements of bullet hells too, in that, whenever an enemy attacks, you have to use your little heart, your little soul, to dodge the enemy's attacks at will. And of course, you take a set amount of hits. And, you die. And take enough hits, you die. That's the usual fare. And it's really, honestly, it is really unique how, an RPG doesn't really treat even in its battle system, doesn't really treat itself like an RPG. I mean, at its core, again, it's an RPG, but it doesn't really feel like it. Because of, all the bullet hells you have to do in, each individual enemy fight and boss fight. And speaking of that, the boss fights are really unique as well, because they just throw out new gimmicks for you to try out, and all of them work. Like, one main mechanic is, blue attacks. And, basically whenever an attack is blue, you just basically don't have to move an inch. Basically like the tutorial says. However, without giving too much away, there is a certain fight in the game that is primarily genius. That gives a pretty awesome spin on the whole blue attacks aspect of the game. And it introduces it in such a way that it's awesome. Like, it's really awesome. And yeah, nothing really too much to say about that, except you can either spare or kill. And, you just kill enemies like you would in an RPG. But, again, the way you play the game determines how the game's story will lay out. Again, if you decide to be a pacifist and just, not kill anything, you go for, the pacifist ending. Or rather, you would if the game doesn't force you to, clear the neutral ending first. But if you decide to go the relentless killer, though, you will get a lot of experience, and you will still level up like you usually do. But I'm just gonna say this: you are going to have a very, very bad time if you decide to go for a genocide run. I am just going to say that right now. You're going to have a very bad time by doing a genocide run. Just saying. But really, that's all I can say about the gameplay, is that, it's incredibly unique in a sense. And stuff, with me repeating myself over and over again, like, it's not an RPG yet, it feels like an RPG, but, or vice versa. I don't know. I don't know. Music! Music. I'm just gonna say that right now. Undertale probably is a game that it's probably like the only game ever that I would buy a soundtrack for if I'm going to use it in any sort of video ever. Because Undertale, honestly, has one of the best soundtracks I ever heard, period. And the way it fits into the story, the way that it uses a lot of themes that you hear a lot. Like, some songs use a battle theme to it, ruins, and all that jazz. Like, the songs using various themes to help set the mood for the story. And honestly, I feel like every single song in the game sets the mood perfectly for, important scenes, hilarious scenes, sad scenes. It fits so well for everything in this game. Period. And I'm only going to spoil the following tracks by name. I'm not going to let you listen to it because the Undertale music is just too good. Pretty much similar to the reasonings why Sakurai won't let other music from Final Fantasy VII into Smash Brothers. So, if I honestly had to pick my favorite track in the entire game, it would be Hopes and Dreams. You expected me to say Megalovania, because that's everyone's favorite track, but you don't understand. But for those of you who think Megalovania is the best, you don't understand. You don't understand. Hopes and Dreams is better. It's better. You only like that song because it's the song to the hardest fight in the game. Hours and hours and hours hearing that song. It's just ingrained into your head. But Hopes and Dreams is better. I'm sorry, but it is. But Megalovania is pretty good too. Like, top 5, but Hopes and Dreams is just top tier for me. Other songs, include, my other pro favorite song, Death by Glamour, Another Medium, Core, Bone Trestle, Sands. That's basically the song. Sands. Undertale, which is a song, by the way, a 6-minute song for that big story drop at the end, which is really again really emotional, very good. 10 Village. What other songs are there? That German sounding name / Asgore. And yeah, I just think the Undertale soundtrack is just so good. It's honestly like one of the best soundtracks I ever heard in a game, because, you know, again, it fits so well into everything, into every single, you know, little thing about this game, period. This is so good. There's even a song that reminds me of, you know, the trip on Tessie in Winters, honestly. Like, there's this song that in Undertale that plays whenever a bird carries you across a gap. I think that's the song's name, somewhat to that effect. But yeah, honestly, it just reminds me of that. Really, it does. Again, very Earthbound inspired, very mixed in all of its, you know, instruments. It uses 8-bit, 16-bit, modern bit, all that jazz, all that goodness. All right, so Undertale is a huge game. Definitely a very, very huge game. But I wouldn't say it's perfect. No game is perfect. And something that I've heard before brings up a very good little thing. Brings up a really good point about this. The sprite detail. I like the sprite detail whenever you're talking to characters, you know, when they have that little black and white portrait thing around them. But as for the overworld sprites, they could have been handled just a little bit better. Like, if you take a look at Flowey sprite, he's literally just a face drawn on a sunflower in the overworld. And, you know, whenever he does his little laugh thing before you exit the ruins, it's just literally his evil face in, you know, his character portrait on the flower, honestly. And again, that's really all I can say. It's just I wish the sprite detail was a little bit better, showed a little bit more emotion for those emotional scenes. Like, they just have that I wouldn't say dull expression, I would say perfect expression. They just have that sort of expression all the time. Just all the time. Like, even some of them don't even look like they're, you know, character sprites at all. I mean, overworld sprites plus battle sprites kind of don't mix, but, you know, it's whatever. It's just one minor thing about the game. Also, another thing. Genocide Run. I feel like Genocide Run is probably where the worst of Undertale comes to mind when it comes to this, because, well, if you want to know how you can just technically do a Genocide Run, here's the thing. So you have to kill everything, right? Well, the game doesn't specifically tell you that each area has a limited amount of monsters. And, you know, you have to stay in a particular area before you know, move on to the next one if you kill everything. And basically what I did was I just walked around like any other RPG, just going up and down all around for about, you know, 5-10 minutes, just killing every single enemy before, you know, the whole but nobody came type deal came around. So while it is probably a good idea for you to do a Genocide Run after you know you've done all the other runs, just prepare for a lot of, you know, waiting around, because you're going to be probably spending like nearly a half hour trying to get those damn enemies to appear to just kill them. And honestly, it took me a very long time to do. Like, even as I got to the final areas of the game where, you know, the enemy encounter rates don't appear like every 5 minutes, there was just a lot of waiting around and stuff. I mean, technically, Undertale is kind of sort of set up so that you can get you know, specific encounter spots. But if you're gonna do a genocide run, that's probably not for me. And when you do eventually, like, kill every single enemy in the game, like, suddenly the random encounters start going nuts over that. It's like, but nobody came. But nobody came. It makes you feel terrible, but then again, at the same time, it's sort of like a, yeah, I get it, for a thing. Like, yeah, I get it. Like, nobody came. I already killed the enemies. Next! Or something like that. I don't know. It's something that only bothers me and only me, but whatever. I told you were gonna have a... Maybe that was the intention. Maybe that was the intention, that Undertale made you have a bad time by doing a genocide one, which is a very bad time indeed. Okay. Honestly, aside from that, I don't really think I can find any other faults with the game, honestly. Other than, you know, sprite detail and genocide run being kind of sort of intentionally a bad time. Then again, it is kind of a bad time. Until you eventually get to, you know, the bad time boss fights. Which is honestly my favorite, you know, fight in the game. Really. Because it's so hard and stuff. Just be prepared to spend hours on it. Or you can be like me and defeat the bad time boss fight in 17 deaths. 17 tries. Yep. 17 tries. I am the berry. I took it under an hour. But honestly, even though I don't really consider Undertale like, oh my god, grand masterpiece of video gaming, and under that, it can be, I can see why it can be considered a masterpiece of video gaming in other people's eyes, honestly. Like the writing is so good. The gameplay is very, very unique in that you can play it whatever you want, virtually leading to, you know, limitless possibilities. And that's not, it's not just enough, like, you know, you kill one thing and then you just, you know, don't kill anything else, or you kill everything and spare that one dude. And, you know, you get multiple variations of endings, as it were. And yeah, it has a very masterful soundtrack, extremely likable characters, very heavily Earthbound inspired stuff in it. And honestly, I can pretty much see why this game is considered, you know, masterpieces among them, because it reminds them so heavily of that time, in that, you know, makes you feel like a kid and you're just playing this RPG that is incredibly witty and funny. Like, you know, Earthbound. Like, you know, the Earthbound stuff, like they did back in the day, or Mother 3's, or the World Ends With You's, or even Personas, and stuff. Plus, it has a cast of characters that is very likable, again, a soundtrack that fits so well into everything, and, again, gameplay that stresses you to either spare or kill, to see what kinds of routes that will lead you to. But for me, honestly, I'd say top 20. I'd say it's within, you know, between 10 and 20 in my list of top games, honestly. It has its faults here and there, yeah, mainly in genocide. But I can definitely see why this game is so good in the eyes of many. By the way, stay away from the Undertale fandom. We are all trash and we are all garbage. And not the good kind of garbage that, you know, the game stresses it to be. No, it's the bad kind of garbage. It's good. But, yeah. So yeah, that's basically Undertale. Sorry if I sounded all discombobulated and everything when it came to, you know, Undertale stuff. But you all know this game. You all know this game. You want to see me Let's Play it, and I probably will, maybe, possibly, in the future, maybe, 2017. But, at any given rate, that's about it. So, I will see you guys on the next edition of Platinum Impressions, whenever it will be, because, again, this series doesn't really have any sort of set schedule to it. Who knows? But anyway, Undertale, very great game. Doesn't cost much on Steam. Doesn't take much to run on Steam, and yeah. I'll see you guys on the next edition of Platinum Impressions. See you guys then.